2 years had passed since the Telari first attacked Earth. The war had changed in ways no one could have predicted. What began as a desperate fight for survival had become something more, a revolution that spread beyond the solar system. Dr. June Park stood on the observation deck of the UEDF flagship Defiance watching the stars. The massive ship, built with technology reverse-engineered from captured Telari vessels, carried 2,000 adapted soldiers toward their most ambitious mission yet. "There you are," said Hana, joining him at the viewport. "Captain Kang is looking for you. The Viridian delegation has arrived." June nodded and followed her through the ship's corridors. 2 years of war had changed them both. Hana's lab coat now had military insignia on it. June walked with a slight limp from an injury during a Telari attack on Mars base. They entered the conference room where Captain Jiho Kang waited with Commander Lee. Beside them stood 3 aliens with green-tinted skin and large, luminous eyes, the Viridians, one of the first species conquered by the Telari. "Dr. Park," said the tallest Viridian, bowing slightly. "I am Krell. We spoke once over a transmission. It is good to finally meet in person." "The honor is mine," June replied. "Your information has been invaluable to our cause." Over the past year, Krell had become humanity's link to the other conquered species in the Telari Empire. As news spread of humans successfully resisting the Telari, subjugated races began to rise up against their oppressors. "The procedure was successful on 5 more of my people," Krell reported. "The adaptation takes root in Viridian biology, though not as strongly as in humans." This was the breakthrough June and Hana had worked on for months, a way to temporarily transfer the human adaptation to other species. It wasn't permanent in non-humans, but it lasted long enough to make a difference in battle. "And the Zentari?" Commander Lee asked, referring to another alien species. 3 successful adaptations," Krell replied. "Their cellular structure is more compatible with the process than ours. They may achieve permanent adaptation with more research." Captain Jiho, whose body now showed the most extensive adaptation patterns of any human, stood up. The metallic lines covering his skin gleamed under the lights. "Then we proceed as planned," he said. "The Coalition fleet will reach Telari space in 3 days. The Defiance will lead the assault on their homeworld." After the meeting, June returned to his lab, where several Viridian and human scientists worked side by side. On examination tables lay samples of tissue from different species, all showing varying degrees of the metallic adaptation pattern. "It's remarkable," said Dr. Tay, who had been on the horizon during the first attack and was now one of June's top researchers. "Human cells adapt naturally, but we can trigger the same process in other species with the serum. The serum was derived from adapted human tissue. It couldn't make other species fully adapt on their own, but it gave them temporary resistance to Telari weapons." "Enough to fight back," June said. "Enough to break the fear that kept the Empire together." That evening, the ship's officers gathered for a final briefing before they reached Telari space. A large holographic display showed the Telari homeworld and its defenses. "Their main fleet has been drawn away," Commander Lee explained, pointing to distant sectors. "Uprisings on 17 worlds have forced them to split their forces." "And their weapons?" asked one officer. "Still primarily energy-based," Jiho replied. "They've developed some variations, but our adaptation continues to provide strong resistance. They're creatures of habit. 1,000 years of success with one weapon made them over-specialize." June listened quietly. The Telari had made a critical mistake. They had built their entire empire on the fear inspired by weapons that killed instantly and without fail, until they met humans. 3 days later, the Coalition fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel on the edge of the Telari home system. Leading the fleet was the Defiance, flanked by ships from 7 formerly subjugated species. "Telari defense stations detecting us," reported a sensor officer. "They're powering up weapons." On the bridge, Captain Jiho stood in full battle armor, the metallic patterns of his adapted skin visible on his face and hands. "All ships, maintain formation," he ordered. "Phoenix squads, prepare for deployment." The first energy blasts from Telari defense stations struck the Defiance's shields. Instead of breaking through, the energy was absorbed. making the shields glow brighter. Shield adaptation holding at 95% efficiency, reported Su-Min Choi, who had become the ship's chief engineer. We're storing the excess energy for weapons. The battle began in earnest as Telari ships moved to intercept the invaders. Energy weapons flashed across space, but the human ships, protected by adaptation technology, pressed forward. Launch. Phoenix squads, Jiho commanded. From the Defiance and other ships, smaller vessels shot toward the Telari homeworld. Each carried adapted soldiers from multiple species, humans, Viridians, Zentari, and others, all united against their former oppressors. June and Hana watched from the medical bay preparing for casualties. Through the ship's communication system, they could hear the battle unfolding. First wave has breached the orbital defenses, reported a tactical officer. Captain Kang's squad has landed at the primary target. The primary target was the Imperial Palace, home to the Tylari Emperor and the heart of their 1,000-year-old empire. Hours passed as the battle raged. Casualty reports came in, but far fewer than expected. The adapted soldiers, even those from non-human species with temporary adaptations, were surviving hits that would have killed them instantly before. Finally, a transmission came from the surface. Jiho's face appeared on the screen, his expression grim but triumphant. The Imperial Palace is secured, he reported. The Tylari Emperor has surrendered unconditionally. A cheer went up throughout the ship. June and Hana embraced, hardly believing what they were hearing. The war that had begun with an unprovoked attack on a human science vessel had ended with the fall of an alien empire. In the days that followed, representatives from all the formerly subjugated species gathered on the Tylari homeworld to negotiate peace terms. June, as the human who had first discovered the adaptation phenomenon, was asked to attend. The Tylari Emperor, a tall, blue-skinned being with ornate markings, sat across from the coalition representatives. His 4 eyes blinked slowly as he addressed them. For 1,000 years, the Tylari have ruled through superior weaponry and fear, the Emperor said. No species ever resisted us effectively, until humans came. Your adaptation defied all our understanding of biology. Adaptation is what humans do best, June replied simply. It's how we survived on Earth through countless challenges. 1 month later, June stood with Hana, Jiho, and Commander Lee on a newly constructed platform in what had been the Imperial Plaza. Before them stretched a crowd of beings from dozens of species, including humans transported from Earth for the ceremony. Today marks the formation of the Galactic Coalition, announced a Viridian speaker. Where once stood an empire built on conquest, we establish a union built on cooperation. June looked at the humans in the crowd. Many showed the metallic patterns of adaptation on their skin, marks that had once been wounds but were now badges of honor. They stood tall among aliens twice their size, respected not for superior technology, but for the biology that had made them uniquely resistant. What happens now? Hana asked quietly as the ceremony continued. We learn, June replied. We study the adaptation process, help other species develop their own forms of resistance. We turn what began as a weapon into a tool for healing. Jiho, who had been offered a high position in the new Coalition Defense Force, nodded. And we prepare. The galaxy is vast. The Telari may not be the only conquerors out there. As the HFY ceremony ended, June thought about the strange journey that had brought them here. A chance discovery in a medical bay on Mars. A biological quirk that had saved humanity and liberated 17 other species. In the end, it wasn't superior weapons or technology that had defeated the Tylari. It was the very thing that made humans human, their endless capacity to adapt, to take what tried to kill them and make it part of their strength. The adapted humans, with their metallic patterned skin that glinted in the alien sunlight, stood as living proof of an ancient truth. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger, and in humanity's case, much, much stronger indeed. That night, as June looked up at unfamiliar stars from the surface of the Tylari homeworld, he felt a sense of peace despite all the challenges that lay ahead. Humanity had faced extinction, and emerged not just alive but transformed. They had found their place in a vast galaxy, not as conquerors, but as liberators, not as destroyers, but as adapters. And that, June thought, was the most human thing of all. 1 year had passed since the first Talari attack. The war had spread throughout the solar system, with battles raging on Mars, the Moon, and in the space between planets. But for the first time, humanity wasn't just surviving, it was fighting. Back. In a large training hall on Mars Base Alpha, 50 adapted soldiers demonstrated their abilities to a group of Earth officials. Their skin gleamed with metallic patterns where the Talari weapons had burned them, then changed them. Captain Jiho Kang stood at the front, his chest covered in the most extensive adaptation patterns anyone had seen. After 6 combat missions against the Talari, he had been exposed to their weapons more than any other human. As you can see, Jiho explained to the officials, a normal energy blast that would kill instantly now does this. He nodded to a technician who fired a Talari weapon directly at Jiho's chest. Instead of burning through him, the energy spread across his skin in glowing blue lines, following the metallic patterns before fading away. The Earth officials murmured in amazement. Captain Kang can now absorb energy that would power a small city for a day, Dr. June Park explained. He stood nearby with Hana monitoring the demonstration. The adapted tissue doesn't just resist the energy, it captures it. One official stepped forward. And the armor enhances this effect? On cue, Jiho put on the specialized combat suit developed by engineer Sumin Choi. Unlike normal body armor, it was thin and flexible, with metallic threads running through it that connected to Jiho's adapted skin. The armor works with our adapted tissue, Jiho explained. It channels the energy, making us even more resistant, and it lets us do this. Jiho pointed at a target drone across the room. He raised his hand, palm out. Blue energy crackled between his fingers, then shot forward in a blast that destroyed the drone completely. The officials broke into spontaneous applause. Later, in their lab, June and Hana met with Sumin Choi, the engineer who had designed the special armor. The latest version is even better, Sumin said, spreading blueprints on the table. It has more connection points to the adapted tissue and can store excess energy for later use. The soldiers are changing faster than we can study them, Hana noted, showing Sumin their latest scans. Their cells continue to evolve months after exposure. The adaptation spreads slowly throughout their bodies. Sumin picked up a sample of the armor material. I've theorized that. The door slid open, interrupting them. Commander Lee entered with a serious expression. Earth Command has approved Operation First Strike, he announced. We're taking the fight to the Talari. An attack? June asked in surprise. Until now, humans had only defended their positions. Commander Lee nodded. Captain Kang will lead 3 Phoenix squads against the Talari outpost on Ganymede. Their mission is to capture Talari technology and, if possible, prisoners for study. Is Eraim this wise? Hana asked. The Talari still outnumber us. They have more ships, more weapons. But their weapons don't work as well against our adapted soldiers, Lee replied. And they don't expect us to attack. The element of surprise will be crucial. 3 days later, June stood in the command center watching tactical displays as the mission unfolded. 3 human ships carrying the adapted soldiers had slipped past Talari patrols and landed on Ganymede, one of Jupiter's moons where the aliens had established a forward base. Phoenix Squad 1 has breached the outer defenses, reported a communications officer. Captain Kang reports minimal resistance. On the main screen, helmet camera footage showed the battle from Jiho's perspective. Talari defenders fired energy weapons at the human soldiers, but the adapted troops absorbed the blasts with minimal damage. When physical projectiles were fired, the Phoenix squads took cover but continued advancing. They've reached the central chamber, the officer announced. They're downloading Talari data and... Wait, they've captured something. Someone. Hours later, June and Hana stood in a secure room, face to face with the first Talari ever captured by humans. The alien was tall, with blue-tinted skin and 4 eyes. It wore what appeared to be a high-ranking uniform. "This is Subcommander Zell," Jiho introduced the prisoner. "Third in command of Tylari forces in this system." The alien looked at them with what might have been contempt. "Your adaptation is an abomination," it said in perfect English. "No species should be able to resist our weapons." "Yet we do," June replied calmly. "Why is that, Subcommander? Have you never encountered a species that could adapt before?" 17. "Civilizations have fallen to the Empire," Zell stated. "All died properly when struck by our weapons. You are the first to change." Hana stepped forward. "Your weapons are based on a specific energy frequency, aren't they? One that disrupts normal cellular functions in most species." The alien's 4 eyes blinked in what might have been surprise. "Your science is primitive," Zell said dismissively. "You cannot understand our technology." "We understand enough," Jiho said. He raised his hand, showing the metallic patterns on his skin. "We understand that your entire empire is built on weapons that no longer work against us." The interrogation continued for hours with the Tylari revealing little. But what it didn't say was as important as what it did. The Tylari Empire had conquered 17 species using primarily their energy weapons. Their entire military strategy depended on those weapons being instantly fatal. "They're afraid," Jiho said after the alien was taken to a secure cell. "I could see it in their eyes. They don't understand what's happening. And fear makes them dangerous," Commander Lee warned. "They're bringing in more conventional weapons, explosives, projectiles, even primitive blades." "But those are weapons we've fought with for centuries," Hana pointed out. "They have no advantage there." In the weeks that followed, news of the successful raid spread throughout the human colonies. For the first time, there was real hope. Recruitment for Operation Phoenix tripled as more people volunteered to undergo the adaptation process. June still had reservations about deliberately exposing people to harm, but he couldn't deny the results. Adapted soldiers were turning the tide of the war. One evening, as June was reviewing new data in his lab, he received an unexpected alert. A transmission was coming in from Titan, one of Saturn's moons, where the Tylari had established a major "Face, Dr. Park," said a voice in heavily accented English. "This is Krell of the Viridian people." June sat up straight. The Viridians were one of the species conquered by the Tylari decades ago. "We have heard about the human adaptation," the voice continued. "Is it true your people resist the death beams?" "It's true," June confirmed cautiously. "Who am I speaking with exactly?" "I am the last scientist of my kind," Krell replied. "The Babais, Tylari use my people as laborers. But something has changed. The Tylari are concerned. They speak of humans with fear." "We've had some success against them," June acknowledged. "More than success," Krell said urgently. "You have broken their myth of invincibility. The other subjugated species are watching. Some are beginning to resist." This was unexpected news. June hadn't considered how human resistance might affect other conquered species. "Can your adaptation be shared?" Krell asked. "Can non-humans develop this resistance?" "We don't know," June admitted. "We've never tested it on non-human subjects. Perhaps that will change," Krell said mysteriously before the transmission abruptly ended. June immediately reported the contact to Commander Lee, who called an emergency meeting with Earth Command. "If other species are beginning to resist Tylari, rule, this changes everything," one Earth general said over the video link. "We could have allies. Or the Tylari might crack down harder on their conquered worlds," another warned. "We need to be careful not to make things worse for these people." 2 days later, a Tylari fleet larger than any seen before entered the Mars system. At its center was a massive ship unlike the others. "That's their command ship," Jiho said, as they gathered in the command center. "I saw images of it during our raid. It carries their highest-ranking officer in this sector." "The Grand Strategist," Commander Lee added. "According to our intelligence, he's never lost a campaign before." Alarms blared as the Tylari began their attack. But this time, humanity was ready. 500 adapted soldiers, led by Captain Jiho and his Phoenix squad, launched in specially designed ships. Each soldier wore Su-Min's latest armor, which glowed with stored energy as they prepared for battle. "This is it," June said to Hana as they watched from the command center. "Everything we've worked for." On the main view screen, they could see the human ships approaching the Tylari fleet. The aliens opened fire immediately, energy weapons blazing. But when those beams struck the ships carrying adapted soldiers, something remarkable happened. The energy didn't destroy them. It was absorbed, channeled, and redirected. "They're using the adaptation technology in the ship shields," Su-Min explained proudly. "Just like the personal armor, but on a larger scale." The battle raged for hours. The Tylari still had superior numbers and technology, but their main weapons were becoming less effective with each encounter, and the adapted humans were learning to use the aliens' energy against them. As the day ended, the impossible happened. The massive Tylari command ship began to retreat, pulling away from Mars with its remaining fleet. "They're withdrawing," Commander Lee announced, his voice filled with dismay. 6 months had passed since the first Tylari attack on Mars. Earth's military leaders had finally accepted what was happening. Human bodies could adapt to alien energy weapons. What had started as June and Hana's surprising discovery was now humanity's greatest hope. June stood in the observation room, watching through a reinforced window as 20 soldiers prepared for their treatment. He still hated calling it that. Treatment was supposed to heal, not cause deliberate harm. "You don't have to watch this part," Hana said, standing beside him. She knew how much he struggled with the ethics of what they were doing. "Yes, I do," June replied quietly. "It was my discovery. I should witness its consequences." Below them, in a large chamber, the soldiers stood in a row. Each wore only shorts, leaving their upper bodies exposed. A robotic arm moved along the line, carrying a captured Tylari weapon. It fired short, controlled bursts at each soldier's chest, creating a precisely measured burn. Some soldiers cried out in pain. Others stayed silent, teeth clenched. All remained standing. They were volunteers for Operation Phoenix, the controversial program that deliberately exposed humans to energy weapons to trigger the adaptation process. "Dr. Park, Dr. Kim," Commander Lee said as he entered the observation room. "Earth Command wants your latest report." "The process is working exactly as we predicted," Hana explained, handing the commander a tablet. "Controlled exposure in specific areas creates adaptation with minimal tissue damage. Recovery time is down to 2 weeks now." June pointed to a chart on the tablet. "The adapted tissue is showing even stronger properties. The resistance to energy weapons increases with each exposure, up to a point." "And the side effects?" Commander Lee asked. June and Hana exchanged glances. "The metallic patterning on the skin is permanent," Hana said, "and some subjects report unusual sensations, tingling, warmth, occasional small energy discharges." "But is it dangerous?" Commander Lee pressed. "Not that we can detect," June answered. "But we've only been studying this for 6 months. Long-term effects are unknown." Commander Lee nodded, then looked down at the soldiers who were now being treated for their burns. "These men and women don't care about long-term effects. They only care about surviving long enough to win this war." Later that day, June met with Captain Jiho Kang, the leader of the first fully adapted squad, Phoenix Squad. Jiho's chest and arms showed the distinctive metallic patterns of adapted tissue. "My team is ready for deployment," Jiho said as June examined him. "We've been training with the new armor engineer Choi designed." "The one that works with your adapted tissue?" June asked. Jiho nodded. "It has conduits that connect to our adapted areas. Somehow it amplifies the resistance effect. We can take direct hits now with barely any damage." June finished his examination and sat back. "The adaptation is progressing well, but please report any unusual symptoms immediately." "Like the energy surges?" Jiho asked with a slight smile. "Those are getting stronger. Last week, Park and my squad managed to short out a computer terminal just by touching it when his adapted tissue was charged." "That's exactly the kind of thing you need to report," June said seriously. This adaptation is changing you in ways we don't fully understand. Jiho stood up, his expression becoming solemn. With respect, Dr. Park, we don't have time to understand everything. The Telari have taken Europa. They're pushing toward Earth. My squad deploys to the moon tomorrow to defend the colonies there. After Jiho left, June found Hana in their lab, reviewing data from the latest tests. Phoenix Squad is shipping out, he told her. They'll be the first fully adapted unit in combat. Hana looked up from her work. Are they ready? Jiho thinks so, June replied. I'm not sure anyone is ready for what they'll face. The Tylari are bringing in new weapons, not just the energy beams we've adapted to, but the adaptation seems to provide some resistance to all energy-based attacks, Hana pointed out, even their newer weapons. A week later, news came from the moon. Phoenix Squad had successfully defended the lunar colony against a Telari force 3 times their size. Captain Jiho's adapted soldiers had absorbed energy blasts that would have killed normal humans instantly. Commander Lee called an emergency meeting to share a video transmission from the lunar base. The footage showed Phoenix Squad in battle. Their specialized armor glowed at the points where it connected to their adapted tissue. When hit by Telari weapons, the energy seemed to flow across their bodies rather than burning through them. They're not just resistant, one officer said in awe. They're practically immune. Not immune, June corrected. The adaptation has limits. Direct hits to non-adapted areas are still fatal, and the Tylari are already developing new weapons. The video showed something else remarkable. One of Phoenix Squad's soldiers, after absorbing multiple hits, pressed his hand against a Telari attacker's armor. There was a flash of blue light, and the alien fell, its systems overloaded. They can redirect the energy, Commander Lee said, pausing the video. Use the enemy's weapons against them. Hana nodded. The adapted tissue stores energy temporarily before either dispersing it or releasing it in a controlled way. We've seen this in the lab, but never at this scale. After the meeting, Commander Lee asked June to stay behind. Earth Command is expanding. Operation Phoenix, Lee told him once they were alone. They want 10,000 adapted soldiers within 3 months. June's eyes widened. That's not possible. The process takes weeks per person, and we only have facilities for a few hundred. They're building adaptation centers on Earth, Lee replied. Mass production, they're calling it. They'll use automated systems like the one here, but on a much larger scale. These are human beings, not weapons to be mass-produced, June said angrily. I know, Lee said, his voice tired. But the Telari have conquered 17 species before us. None of them had our advantage. None of them survived. Meanwhile, on the Telari command ship orbiting Jupiter, the Grand Strategist faced an uncomfortable meeting with the Imperial Council, which had traveled from their home system to oversee the conquest of Earth. The humans resist in ways we have not seen before, the Grand Strategist explained, projecting images of Phoenix Squad in battle. Their bodies adapt to our weapons. Impossible, said the High Commander, the eldest of the Council. No species adapts to pure energy. It defies biological laws. Yet they do, the Grand Strategist insisted. With each encounter, our weapons become less effective against those who have been previously exposed. Then we will use different weapons, the High Commander declared. Bring in the heavy destroyers. Use projectile weapons, toxic gases, whatever is necessary. These humans will fall like all the others. Back on Mars, June watched as a shuttle arrived carrying wounded soldiers from the moon battle. Despite their adapted tissue and special armor, they had still suffered injuries, but they had survived, and they had won. One of the injured was a young woman named Sue from Phoenix Squad. Her adapted tissue glowed faintly as medics brought her into the medical bay. Did we hold the line? She asked June as he examined her wounds. You did, he assured her. The lunar colonies are safe because of you. Sue smiled despite her pain. The Telari didn't expect us to fight back. Their faces when our hits didn't. Kill us, she laughed weakly. Priceless. That night, June sat alone in his quarters reviewing the battle footage again. The adapted soldiers moved differently than regular troops, more confident using their bodies as shields to protect their non-adapted comrades. His door chimed, and Hana entered. carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Still working?" she asked, handing him 1 cup. "Trying to understand what we've created," June replied. "These soldiers, they're still human, but they're changing in ways we never expected." Hana sat beside him. "Human plus, maybe. Evolution accelerated by necessity. I just hope we're not losing something important along the way," June said softly. "Our humanity?" Hana asked. June nodded. "We're turning people into weapons." "No," Hana said firmly. "The Telari turned us into weapons when they attacked without warning. We're just learning to survive." On the screen they watched Captain Jiho leading his squad into battle, his adapted skin glowing with absorbed energy, his face determined. "Phoenix Squad returns to Mars tomorrow," Hana said. "Earth Command wants them to train the next wave of volunteers." "Not just volunteers anymore," June reminded her. "They're drafting people now." The alarm suddenly blared throughout the base, its urgent tone all too familiar. "Telari ships detected entering Mars orbit," the computer announced. "All personnel to battle stations." June and Hana rushed to the window. In the red Martian sky, dozens of massive ships appeared, larger than any they had seen before. "The heavy destroyers," June whispered. "They're changing tactics." As they watched, the first energy blasts hit the base's shields, but mixed among them were physical projectiles, missiles and kinetic weapons that the human adaptation couldn't resist. "They're adapting too," Hana said grimly, "in their own way." The war for humanity's survival was entering a new phase, but so was humanity itself. 3 months had passed since the first Telari attack on Mars Base Alpha. The base still stood, though parts of it were damaged. The aliens had retreated after their initial assault, surprised by the human resistance. In his lab, Dr. June Park looked through his microscope at yet another tissue sample. Beside him, Dr. Hana Kim typed notes into a tablet. "It's the same in all of them," June said, leaning back from the microscope. "Every survivor from the first attack has these cellular changes." The lab door slid open and Tai walked in. He had been the young engineer from the horizon. Now he was fully recovered except for the strange metallic patches on his skin where he had been burned. "Dr. Park, you wanted to see me?" Tai asked. June nodded. "How do you feel today, Tai?" "Strong," Tai replied with a small smile. "Better than before I was hurt, honestly. The burn sites sometimes tingle, but they don't hurt." Hana scanned the metallic patches on Tai's arm. "The changed cells are stable, no signs of cancer or other problems. They just seem improved." "Improved how?" Tai asked, looking down at his arm. "Your skin at the burn sites is now 10 times stronger than normal human skin," June explained. "It conducts electricity differently, and it seems to absorb certain types of energy." The alarm suddenly blared throughout the base. "All personnel to battle stations. Telari ships approaching." Tai rushed off to his post while June and Hana prepared the medical bay for casualties. Through the base windows they could see the sleek silver Telari ships descending toward Mars. "They're back sooner than we expected," Hana said, her voice tight with worry. The first explosions rocked the base an hour later. Soon the medical bay filled with injured soldiers. "Same weapons as before," one medic reported, as she brought in a wounded security officer. "Those energy blasts that leave the strange burns." As June treated the new casualties, he noticed something odd. The soldiers who had been injured in the first attack 3 months ago, the ones with the metallic patches on their skin, had much less severe burns when hit again. "Commander Lee needs to see this," June told Hana as he treated a soldier named Min who had been hit in both attacks. "Look at his burns. The new ones are only surface level where before they went bone deep." After the attack ended, with the humans somehow managing to drive the Telari back again, June and Hana took their findings to Commander Lee. "You're saying our people are becoming resistant to their weapons?" Commander Lee asked, his tired eyes suddenly alert. "Not just resistant," Hana explained. "The changed cells from the first burns actually seem to absorb and disperse the energy from the weapons. The effect is strongest at the exact spot of the previous injury, but it extends throughout the body to some degree." Commander Lee leaned forward. "Can you prove this?" June placed a tablet on the commander's desk. It showed 2 scans side by side. This is Min's burn from the first attack. June pointed to the left image. And this is his new burn in almost the same spot. He pointed to the right image. The damage is 70% less severe even though the weapon was identical. Commander Lee stood up and paced his office. Is this why the Talari retreated? They noticed their weapons weren't working as well? We think so. Hana nodded. Intercepted. Communications suggest they're confused. Apparently no species has ever developed this kind of adaptation before. Commander Lee stopped pacing. I'm giving you full access to all resources you need. Study this adaptation. Figure out if we can use it somehow. In the weeks that followed, June and Hana worked day and night. They converted half the medical bay into a research lab and gathered data from every survivor of the Talari attacks. It's not just the skin, June said one night as they examined results. The whole body develops a kind of resistance. The cells somehow learn the energy signature of the weapon and create defenses against it. Hana pointed to another screen. And look at this. The adapted cells sometimes store the energy briefly before releasing it, almost like tiny batteries. Their research was interrupted when Tai and Min burst into the lab. You need to see this, Tai said, holding out his arm, where the metallic patch gleamed. Watch. Tai picked up a small metal tool and touched it to his adapted skin. Tiny blue sparks jumped between the metal and his skin. It started happening yesterday, Min added, demonstrating the same effect with his own adapted tissue. We can feel the energy building up sometimes, and we can release it through the burn sites. June carefully examined both men. The adapted cells are becoming more active. They're not just passive anymore. Word of the adaptation spread throughout the base. Soldiers who had survived energy weapon burns began to see themselves differently, not as victims, but as the front line of humanity's new defense. Commander Lee called a meeting with June, Hana, and the base's top military officers. The Talari are regrouping, Lee said grimly. Our scouts report they're bringing in larger ships. They're not giving up. Neither are we, said Captain Yoon, the head of base security. Our defenses are stronger now, and we have our secret weapon. He nodded toward June and Hana. It's not a weapon yet, June cautioned. Just a biological quirk that might give us an edge. A quirk no other species has, Commander Lee reminded him. The Talari have conquered 17 other civilizations using these weapons. None of them adapted like we did. Later that evening, as June and Hana continued their research, they received unexpected visitors, a group of soldiers led by Captain Yoon. We have a proposal, Captain Yoon said. We want you to expose us to the energy weapons, in controlled conditions. June stared at them in shock. You want us to deliberately injure you? To make us stronger, one soldier corrected. If adaptation is our advantage, we should use it. That's too dangerous, Hana protested. We don't fully understand the process yet. War is dangerous, Captain Yoon replied simply. The Talari won't wait for us to finish our research. Commander Lee eventually approved a limited test. 5 volunteer soldiers would undergo controlled exposure to captured Talari weapons under June and Hana's supervision. This goes against everything I believe as a doctor, June said as they prepared for the first test. First, do no harm. Sometimes we must cause a small harm to prevent a greater one, Hana replied softly. If we don't find a way to fight back, the Talari will destroy all of humanity. The tests began the next day. The volunteers, including Captain Yoon himself, were exposed to brief controlled bursts from a Talari energy weapon. The burns were painful but limited in depth and area. Over the next 2 weeks, June and Hana monitored the soldiers' recovery. Just as they had predicted, all 5 developed the metallic-looking adapted tissue at the burn sites. The adaptation is even stronger with controlled exposure, June noted as he examined Captain Yoon. The cells are changing more efficiently, with less damage to surrounding tissue. On the final day of testing, as June was recording the results, alarms blared once again throughout the base. Talari fleet approaching, the announcement system warned. All personnel to battle stations. This time the Talari came with a massive force, dozens of ships darkening the Martian sky. "They're done testing us," Commander Lee said as he organized the defense. "This is the real invasion." As the base prepared for battle, Captain Yoon and his volunteers suited up in their combat gear. The metallic patches on their skin glinted under the lights. "Will it be enough?" Hana asked June as they watched the soldiers head out. "I don't know," June admitted. But for the first time, the Tylari are fighting an enemy that doesn't die when hit, an enemy that gets stronger with each attack. Through the windows, they could see the Tylari ships opening fire. The battle for Mars and perhaps for humanity's future had begun. In the command center, Commander Lee received the first reports from the front lines. His eyes widened in surprise. "Captain Yoon's squad is holding the line," he told June and Hana. "The Tylari weapons are having reduced effect, just as you predicted." A communication officer called out, "Sir, we've intercepted Tylari transmissions. They're confused. Their commanders are demanding to know why their weapons aren't working properly." For the first time since the invasion began, Commander Lee smiled. "Tell them it's because they're fighting humans, and humans adapt." Dr. June Park rubbed his tired eyes as the red alert siren rang through Mars Base Alpha. It was the third alarm this week, but this time it wasn't a drill. Real casualties were coming in. "Dr. Park to Medical Bay 4. Emergency cases incoming." The computer's voice was calm, unlike the rushing medical staff around him. June grabbed his lab coat and ran down the curved hallway of the Mars station. The United Earth Defense Force had built this base 5 years ago, and as the lead medical researcher, June had been here for 3 of those years. "What happened?" June asked as he pushed through the door to see his research partner, Dr. Hana. Kim, already preparing the medical bay. Hana looked up, her face pale. "First contact, June, and it didn't go well." June froze. Humanity had been searching for alien life for centuries. Now they had found it, or rather, it had found them. The science vessel Horizon was attacked near Europa, Hana explained quickly, as she calibrated the medical scanners. No warning, no communication. They just fired. Before June could ask more questions, the doors slid open. Medical teams rushed in with hover stretchers. On them lay the crew of the Horizon, or what was left of them. "What kind of weapons did this?" June whispered as he stared at the strange burns covering the first patient. The burns weren't like anything he had seen before. They glowed with a faint blue light and seemed to pulse. The edges weren't charred like normal burns but had a strange metallic sheen. "Energy weapons," said Commander Dae-hyun Lee, who had just entered the medical bay. His uniform was crisp despite the emergency, his posture stiff. "Nothing like our lasers or plasma cannons. These cut through our shields like they weren't even there." June and Hana worked quickly, scanning the patients and treating the wounds as best they could. There were 12 survivors total, all with similar injuries. "The pain is different," gasped one of the patients, a young engineer named Tae. "It burns, but it also feels cold and electric at the same time." June gave Tae pain medication and took tissue samples from around his wound. Something about these burns bothered him. The tissue wasn't just damaged. It seemed to be changing. "Hana, look at this," June called, pointing to his microscope screen. "The cells at the edge of the burn, they're not dying." Hana leaned in, her eyes widening. "That's impossible. Those cells took a direct hit." "Not only are they not dying," June continued, adjusting the magnification, "they're transforming. Look at the cellular structure. It's incorporating some kind of energy signature." For the next 12 hours, June and Hana treated the patients and studied the strange burns. They kept their observations about the changing cells private. Medical protocol said they should report everything immediately, but they needed to be sure before they claimed something so unusual. 3 days later, as June was checking on Ty's wound, he noticed something that made him call Hana over immediately. "The burn is healing much faster than it should," he said quietly. "And look at the new skin. It has that same metallic sheen we saw at the edges of the wound." Hana scanned the area with a handheld medical device. "The cellular structure is completely different now. It's like the skin has been upgraded." A week after the attack, as the patients were recovering better than expected, An emergency alert sounded throughout the base. This time, it wasn't for casualties. All senior staff to command center immediately, the announcement blared. When June and Hana arrived at the command center, the room was tense. On the main screen was an image of a sleek silver ship approaching Mars. It was nothing like any human vessel. They call themselves the Tylari, Commander Lee explained to the gathered staff. This is their ambassador ship. They've demanded to speak with Earth's leaders. The screen changed to show the alien. The Tylari had smooth, blue-tinted skin, 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and no visible nose. Its mouth was small and didn't move much as it spoke in perfect English. We require your immediate surrender, the Tylari ambassador stated coldly. The attack on your vessel was merely a demonstration. Your species is primitive. Your technology is inferior. Resistance will only bring unnecessary suffering. Commander Lee stepped forward. We were conducting peaceful exploration. Your attack was unprovoked. The Tylari made a sound that might have been a laugh. Your existence in space is provocation enough. The galaxy belongs to those strong enough to hold it. You humans are not. What do they want? Whispered Hana to June. Earth must surrender all off-world colonies and resources within 30 days, the Tylari continued. Your species will be permitted to remain on your home planet under our supervision. This is generous. Most species are simply eradicated. After the transmission ended, the command center erupted in angry voices. Earth had only recently established bases on Mars, Europa, and Titan. The thought of surrendering humanity's first steps into the solar system was unthinkable. We can't fight them, said the chief engineer. You saw what their weapons did to the horizon. Our shields might as well be paper. Commander Lee raised his hand for silence. We will not surrender. Earth is sending reinforcements. Until then, we prepare for war. As the meeting broke up, June pulled Hana aside. We need to tell him about the cellular adaptation. We don't know what it means yet, Hana cautioned. It might be nothing, June agreed. But if human tissue can somehow adapt to their energy weapons, that could be important. They went to Commander Lee's office after the meeting and explained what they had observed in the burn victims. You're saying our people are developing resistance to their weapons? Lee asked, his eyes narrowing. Not resistance exactly, June clarified, but their cells are changing in response to the energy. We've never seen anything like it. Keep studying this, Lee ordered, and keep it confidential for now. If we have any advantage at all against these Tylari, we need to understand it fully. That night, as June looked at more tissue samples, an alarm blared through the base. The Tylari hadn't waited 30 days. They were attacking now. All personnel to battle stations. Commander Lee's voice came over the intercom. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. June and Hana rushed to prepare the medical bay for more casualties. As they worked, June couldn't help but wonder if the strange adaptation they had observed would matter at all. The Tylari clearly believed no species could stand against their weapons. What they didn't know was that humans had something no other species seemed to have. Bodies that could learn, adapt, and evolve, even in the face of weapons designed to kill instantly. As the first explosions rocked the base, June looked at the recovering patients from the horizon. Their wounds now shimmered with that strange metallic sheen. If humans could adapt to the Tylari weapons, maybe, just maybe, humanity had a chance after all. Commander Lee appeared at the medical bay door, his face grim. We've intercepted their communications. The Tylari are shocked that our people survived their weapons at all. Apparently, every other species they've encountered died instantly when hit. June and Hana exchanged looks. Their discovery might be more important than they had realized. Well then, June said, his voice firm with new determination. Let's show them what humans can do.